Hello, captains, and welcome back to my channel. I am your host, USS Endeavor, and we have reached Tier 8, which means it's time for the St. Louis to make her entrance. And I'll be pretty frank with all of you, this is not my favorite ship. I know I enjoy cruisers. It's probably my most favorite playstyle in the game, but this one just feels completely out of place. We're going to go over the stats, do a direct side-by-side comparison with the Charles Martel, which is the tier below it, and you're going to understand why I feel that Wargaming seriously needs to reconsider how they can make the changes to differentiate this boat from its lower tier counterpart. So we're going to go over all that. You're going to see why I believe that's the case. And I feel that in order to do a appropriate side-by-side comparison of the Charles Martel, I need to keep the same build that I had whenever I used her. So that's why we're using Rue with all the exact same stats. And along with that, we're also using all the same mod selections with turret rotation in the first, the propulsion in the second, steering gears in the third, and then in the fourth slot, we are using the main battery mod 3, which is going to help reduce our reload. On to the consumables. In one game, we're using the main battery reload booster, which helps our DPM significantly for 15 seconds. And then in another game that I'm featuring, in a double feature, I'm showcasing the sonar, which has 4.7 kilometer range, which is slightly better than the Charles Martel that had it at 4.4. We have an increased repair party, which is nice, and then the engine boost is relatively the same. You get a plus 20% to your stock speed, which is fantastic. Now on to the survivability, and here is the Martel on the far right, and on the left-hand side, we are technically healthier, but only by a little under 3,000 hit points, which is not that much of a difference. You do have a torpedo damage reduction increase of 3% from 16% on the Martel to 19%, but that's still very minimal change. Now this, and I apologize for the stats, I had the wrong thing on whenever I was showing it. The firing range is the exact same at 16.3 as the Martel, but look at every other stat line. And I am not making this up. If you look at the Martel and you look at the St. Louis and you have the exact same build, you have the exact same guns, down to every inch, the same damage, the same fire chance, the same reload, the same distance, same guns, same format too. So nothing has changed there. On to the torpedoes, and this makes absolutely no sense to me. The Tier 8 St. Louis has worse torpedoes than the Tier 7 Martel. It has the same reload, it has less damage, and it has a kilometer shorter range. Same amount of torpedoes, but it's worse by category. The AA defense is the only major difference that is in the favor of the St. Louis that I could see, stat-wise. It has a semi-decent AA rating at a 78. Which really packs a punch at 5 kilometers, whereas the Martel is at a 53 rating and has, average AA. Onto the maneuverability, this also I feel is in favor of the Martel. Yes, technically it is a 0.6 less maximum speed. However, the turning circle radius is worse on the St. Louis, and the rudder shift time is also worse on the St. Louis than the Martel. And that is a noticeable difference. So slightly faster, but very negligible in its difference with speed. Onto the concealment, and again, this is the exact same guns as the Martel, so why you would have a worse detectability by sea and by air and while firing guns and smoke is beyond me, but it's all worse for the St. Louis. I have 11 battles in her. I did play a couple times to try and get a video, and I think I played 4 or 5 games, and I won 4 out of the 5, so those are kind of skewed. On to the armor. The armor is almost identical with you have the exact same 25 millimeter bow and stern. On the Martel, you had it all over the ship. You still have the same blue section where they can punch through and hit your citadel from the nose. This is the only difference, this section right here. This section can bounce 15-inch shells, but you're not going to face that at Tier 8. And that's the biggest reason why I feel like this is practically a carbon copy ship, because in Tier 7 you're going to be facing some things that may have 15-inch shells, but that's negligible because your 25 millimeter armor all around Charles Martel is not going to bounce it. Likewise with the St. Louis, you do not have the armor to bounce anything. So it has the exact same citadel, exact same layout, sits above the water, extends a pretty decent distance all throughout. Here's another look at that citadel from a side. It's kind of in a capital I sort of formation where it's spaced in the middle, but I'm telling you that spaced armor doesn't work. All right, captains, here we go. This is the first of two game modes, or gameplays rather. First being on shards, and we're in a Tier 7, Tier 8 lobby. So this is probably the most favorable setting that you're going to be able to get. You got a lot of cruisers. You have one destroyer on either team and a couple of battleships. But overall, this is about where the St. Louis is best able to survive, really. Because, remember, it's practically identical to the Charles Martel. It has worse torpedoes. It has the exact same guns, same reload. All of the consumables basically do the exact same thing except for your heal, which heals slightly more. But because of your status as a Tier 8, you're going to be going up against ships that the Charles Martel just simply won't go up against. So, again, because there's no real massive difference other than your AA, which is really not that much better, in my opinion. It is better statistically and on paper, but if that's the only thing that's better about this ship, it's really not that great. We all know that if you're going up against a carrier, even if you have decent AA, they're still going to be able to have their way with you if you're by yourself. So in this game mode, and this is a very quick one, if I'm going to be honest with you, this one's a pretty quick one, but I wanted to focus on just the area in which I'm going to be in. The rest of our team does a really good job on both of their flanks, but we're spawning here mid. The Udachi, which is the only destroyer, kind of started late, which is why we've been able to get a jump on him, and we're heading straight into Bravo. Recognizing that, he goes around the other way. We don't have sonar in this. We're using the main battery reload, so we're going to push in here in the cap because it's being contested. So the destroyer is more than likely here because it's the Le Fantasque, which is a very fast destroyer that has no smoke. So it's the French version in the destroyer side. Eventually we'll feature that line, but right now, being here, one of the things that I wanted to show mainly about this gameplay is how well of fires that we actually get. We actually get pretty decent fires. Here in the exact moment of this gameplay, I wasn't sure if I wanted to push out and start focusing that Tulsa. The Veneto, which is right here in the cap, was a very big concern. If he would have pushed around this corner, I would have had no choice but to back up. So here I finally start opening up. I was a little afraid to do that because I wasn't sure if I was going to get spotted off of my left flank. Thankfully, I'm not, so I'm just able to clear these islands. And if you notice, I got a fire right off the bat. There we get spotted by the Fantasque, so we take a quick shot at him, but we whiff it. Don't even clip him. I'm not sure if it eclipsed through the rocks and it glitched, but weren't able to touch him there. But here we get just a little fire from right off the stern. Those shots barely cleared it. And here is just, I wanted to show that each ship has 4 sections to set fires. I'm pretty sure most of you already know this, but just in case you're not, you have 1 off the nose, 1 off the stern, and 2 pretty much just offset from the middle. And so each ship has the ability to get set on fire 4 times. So I'm going to be, knowing this, I'm going to be kind of picking where my shots are strategically in order to get the most fires on this ship. And as you can see, he has been whittled down quite a bit. These fires are really sticking, and we've already gotten 4 against him. So I'm just trying to aim because he's going backwards, so I'm aiming slightly behind so that these shells will hit that section in between the 2 fires. And boom, we get it. So now he's set on 3, so now I'm changing my angle to be able to get 3 fires, or 4 fires. But he dies before that happens. So that's a little unfortunate. Here I see the Fantastic pushing up, and since the Veneto was not keen on pushing me, I am now pushing around this corner, and I'm about to utilize my main battery reload booster. So it's the one perk that I have. I can't spot him via hydro, but because he's so close, I don't need it. Here I'm just throwing torpedoes out just in case he decides to change direction, but he's a little too low now. I do pop my reload booster, but 1 shot's enough to take him out, eliminating the only destroyer threat in this game. And because I've got the main battery reload booster still working for me, I'm just going to start shooting the Veneto. Again, aiming specifically in spots where we can try to get fires. He's got 2 on the front, so that's why I'm aiming in the back, and I get pretty decent RNG, although right there he got set on fire by something else before we had a chance. So we're going to shoot 1 more towards the rear of the ship. Hopefully we can get 1, and we do. So now he's got a quad fire against him, which is pretty hilarious. So this Veneto is just getting completely melted, and he gets taken out right there, ending the match. So this was pretty much a steamroll. We don't get top spot, but I just thought that I wanted to show that in that short amount of time we were able to get 7 fires. Nobody did better than 2,000 because it ended on the mercy rule before the game really even got a chance to get going. Now on to the second game, and this is the one that I really wanted to feature because it's a legendary battle, and it's mainly legendary ships. There's a couple of tier 8s that are in this, but for the most part, it's pretty much a legendary lobby. I'm by myself. We're on the Islands of Ice with the Epicenter game mode, which can be a really tough game mode. Here we spawn on the far right-hand side. So this is typically what you're going to go up against. This is the kind of game that you realistically need to expect to be in. And this game is going to showcase a lot of things. One, it's going to showcase endurance and being making the right moves when you can, but also showing the fallacies of this ship, and that even when you make the right moves, there are mistakes that you will make, like I do, and I make mistakes in this match, and I will point them out to you whenever I do. But it's also kind of the will to survive. You're going to see that. As we're pushing up here, we're going to try and utilize this big block of ice to try and shelter us in the very beginning parts of this match. But very quickly, I am going to realize that this position is not going to be a good position. As you see, there was a Des Moines there, and behind him is a Bourgogne, which is really scary, and the Kronstadt, which is out here. So we've got 3 ships out here, and if you look at the support that I have behind me, it's not that great. In fact, they're actually going to start maneuvering to the left-hand side, and as they do that, I realize I can't stay here. There's no way I can take on a Kronstadt, a Des Moines, and a Bourgogne on this flank all by myself. And thankfully, the other battleships that are kind of mid are not focusing and looking at me. At least I can't think that. I am targeted by 3 ships right now. But at first I was going to try and hold this position, but I realized that it's kind of a futile gesture. We're angling as best as we can. And against the Kronstadt, and even the Bourgogne, if he hits me in the mid deck section, like we talked about, it's a 27 millimeters, which can bounce 15-inch shells, which is what the Burgoyne has. So it's about the only ideal scenario. However, the high DPM of the Des Moines, the Kronstadt, which is a very healthy, tanky cruiser, this is the point where I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not sticking around. And there you see the smoke cloud pop up. And I also forgot to mention that in this game, I am not running the main battery reload booster. I'm running the Hydro, which extends out to 4.7 kilometers. So this is about the best and worst move that I made during the game, because I realized that here in the early going, it's being contested in the middle as we throw our 9-kilometer lesser effective torpedoes out there than the Charles Martel, which I still don't understand. So we shoot those out there, and now we're moving in. And the radar comes in, which immediately spots the destroyer, which is the Sumner. And our team does a fantastic job of focusing him. There I'm checking to see what my actual range of my Hydro is in the game. And now that I'm in it, I pop it in case the Hydro ends up quitting. We do get the kill there, but I got to be honest, it was very negligible. We just cleaned it up. I wanted to get him off the board because it does two things. One less destroyer, which are very effective late game. Two, we're now able to start capping this middle cap. As you can see, not only we're capping the middle, but we're capping the second ring as well. But in making that move, I'm trying to get around this island, which I had to slow down to do, and that one shell wipes half my health off the board from this Yamato, which you're going to go up against. You're going to go up against Yamatos. I'm also getting focused from that far right side with those other ships that we initially were focusing. And here I'm like, oh gosh, I've got to get out of here. It's way too hot. And I'll be honest, this is the lucky part. This is a big mistake. I'm trying to get out of here, but you've got these Yamatos, you've got a Montana, and they are focusing me, and they're going to take a shot at me. And I get whittled down to less than 300 hit points right off the beginning. And this is still within the first 5 minutes of the match. And most people at this point would have probably given up. I considered myself pretty much done at this point. I am less than one shot. I think I'm, if a good wave hits me, I'm dead. But we're technically up on ships. We have both destroyers on their team that are gone. And although we do lose one of those ships right there, I'm thinking to myself, if I can just survive and position myself in the right way to get myself behind islands, there is a small chance that I might be able to live. And at this point, the best thing that I can do for my team is to simply survive. So it's in these moments that you have two choices. You can either play really stupid and reckless because you have nothing to work with and you know you're going to die, so you might as well just end it, which gives points to the other team. Or you can dig deep and really hyper-focus and try to figure out, what can I do even though I'm going to be much less effective in being able to battle ships? How can I position myself, utilize the cover, still be able to spot for my team? And thankfully, we have both of our destroyers, whereas they don't. So that's a big part of why. Plus, we have 2 of the cap points out of the 3, and they have none. So, and the ship counts are technically even, but we have an overwhelming advantage. So as long as I don't do anything really stupid, well, I can't make any more mistakes, rather, we can still affect the ebb and flow of this game. And that's what I'm going to do. So as I'm pushing out, if I'm in open water, I am not going to be shooting, because anybody that's on the opposing team that sees that I'm really, really low obviously is going to start shooting at me. So that's why, while the Yamato is in range, I don't really take shots. Anytime that I have to use the mini-map in order to understand these things, I am really hyper-focused at this point. So I am one shot to all these ships out here. And I want you to watch this. This Worcester that's right here, which is less than one shot, look at all these shells that are coming in, and they're not hitting. And not only are they not hitting, he's surviving all of this. And I got to be honest, I was like, man, we just got really, really fortunate. It was hilarious watching this. You kind of see ships like this, and you're like, how in the world did they get away with that garbage? And I kind of had to say the same thing about me. How in the world are we still alive? But this Worcester, I think, that also does a really good job doing the exact same thing, utilizing the best that they can when they have very little to work with. And I think that's a really good trait for captains who understand that they can still turn the tide of the battle. They can still make a difference. You just have to be a lot more smart about it. We end up getting a little comfortable when we have all the hit points because there's an air of, well, nobody's taking shots at me, and a little bit of an air of invincibility. As you saw, we held our shot until the island was blocking us in that Montana. We have to be smart now. And I kind of enjoy and like the fact that when you are in a position where it's almost impossible to win, those are the times where I have an opportunity to prove all the doubters wrong, and even myself, because it's a huge confidence booster when you can really make an impact when everything says you shouldn't be making an impact. So we were able to get that one heal back a while back. We have no more heals at our disposal. And even if we did have another heal, it wouldn't matter because we have so little hit points that we have to stay unspotted for as long as we possibly can. And our destroyers do a great job of providing the spotting that we need. And the Reds don't do that great of a job of taking advantage of the ships that are really low, like myself and that Worcester. And every time a ship gets taken out, I start to reposition. But this game is going to be insanely close. So just because we're winning by over 200 points and we have the theoretical ship lead, you're going to see that here in a little bit, that's not going to matter. This game is very close. It's very competitive. And I loved it because, for one, it shows how weak the St. Louis is. But it also shows that in those weakened states, you can still make a difference. So I'm not shooting here because the Yamato can hit me, but because he's not focusing me and he shot his guns, there we take a shot. He sees me, he immediately targets me, and he moves his guns around to take a shot at me, but because we have positioned ourselves in the right place, here I was going to stop, but I'm still being spotted by something off my right-hand side, which is the Des Moines, which is now shooting at me. So this was almost a mistake. Had the Des Moines been aiming correctly, we probably would have gotten wiped out. But now we are going to utilize, yet again, another island. And thankful to our destroyer player who is staying out here and doing the job of a destroyer, spotting the Des Moines and the Yamato. That helps me be able to make this play. Here I had AP loaded, but now the Des Moines is moving back, and we're just going to stay here. And we only adjust our movement whenever we realize that we're being spotted. But because we're in a position where we're not spotted, we can get shots effectively on target against this Des Moines, which is a huge threat to our destroyers, so we've got to get him off the board. Makes him the priority target. There we just lost another ship. It's now 4 ships versus 3. And this Des Moines has got to go. Since the Yamato went down, I don't have to worry about anything off of the left-hand side. So now I'm just trying to back up enough to be able to get these shots over the island. And we're setting fires. We're getting really good RNG. There we switched to AP because he's practically flat broadside to us. And he can't see me. We can see him. This is positioning 101. Got to maintain that. And as you see, we haven't really been shot at except for a couple of times as we take out the Des Moines, making a huge play, preserving the life of our destroyers just a little bit longer. And now the opposing team is with the Kronstadt and the Burgoyne that's left, which are still dangerous ships for me, are finally making their way inside. But as you can see, our battleship that's way out there is pretty much dead. He's in the same category as us. And speaking of, as of that, he goes down. So now it's those two versus me and our two destroyers that are left. And here, this destroyer that's in front of us, I'm guessing is trying to make a play in order to get more torpedoes off. But I'll be honest, they do miss position a little bit, and I think it may have been the Kronstadt that has a really long radar, preserved one, enough to be able to radar, and you're going to see that destroyer that was just off of our screen, which I was hoping he would continue to provide this spotting, which right now he is, but here in a little bit, they're going to focus him, and right there, they're starting to shoot at him, and he gets wiped off the board right there, giving the Confederate to the Burgoyne. So that Confederate player, the Burgoyne player, has done a really good job this game and has proven that they are a very capable ship to be able to take us out. So now it's just down to a 2v2. I'm a one shot, and now I'm thinking, oh boy, if our other destroyer player decides to push in and get himself spotted and he gets wiped out, that's not good. So here I had told him to get back. He wisely listened, and here I'm throwing up the thank you, good job, and GG's. So keeping the island in between me and this Burgoyne and Kronstadt, because at this point it would be a huge throw if by some reason we lost. But the score is still very heavily in our favor because of the play that we made earlier, getting in there, taking out the destroyer, the Sumner. Yes, we traded a lot of our hit points in order to make that play, but I feel like here at the end it was all worth it. Even though I was literally a sliver, and I mean a sliver, of life near the beginning of this game, it did end up working itself out in this instance. But that's not always the case as we close out the game with the victory. And we don't get top spot, but I felt like it was more important to show being able to turn the tide even when we were down. And hats off to both of our destroyer players who played a really good game, almost identical stats, for just being able to spot and play the role of a destroyer correctly. And we came on third place, which is not too bad in a tier 8 legendary lobby. So those are the two games. Again, final thoughts on the St. Louis. It needs a buff. I don't know where it needs a buff, but it needs a buff. It's too similar to the Charles Martel, and in fact, in some ways, it's worse. So that's a look at it, captains. I highly recommend, if you want to get this ship, that's on you. But until Wargaming does something with it, I feel like it's not quite in the right spot. So that's a look at the St. Louis. Like I said, thank you, captains. We're going to take a look at the Colbert next. So until then, this is the USS Endeavor signing off.